6 different tests, 4 carbon bows and 2 aluminum bows for comparison's sake. This is the 2025 Carbon Bow Showdown. Let's get into it. The Prime Form 34. It is equipped with the Trek Pro 3V Micro. Something I appreciate about this sight is the fact that the very top pin and the very bottom pin are actually adjustable so that you can adjust the gaps in this sight to fit the way that your specific setup shoots. This bow is also equipped with the ripcord ratchet, limb-driven system. I appreciate how simple the ratchet system makes setting up this rest. However, one thing that I think it lacks on is when trying to set up the launcher arm, the fact that it is sliding along this rod as opposed to having to micro adjust left and right, I found that a little bit frustrating, but nonetheless, the rest seems to work great and operate well. Up next is the Hoyt Carbon RX9 Ultra. The RX9 Ultra is equipped with the Excel AccuClick Hunter sight with an UltraView sight housing. I really appreciate being able to adjust these AccuClicks to yardages that make sense to the shooter so that if you don't have time to look or something along those lines, you can feel that indent as you go from 20 to 60. You can feel those indents. And something that I really like to do is put them at 20, 40, 60, 80, so on. And that way I know, click, hey, you know, if something's coming in and I just roll it real fast, I can feel those indents, and I find that very beneficial when I'm on the hunt. This bow is equipped with the Ultra Rest Integrate MX2. Just in setting this rest up, I found several things that I felt were beneficial. The micro adjust on the launcher arm itself, left and right. The micro adjust, moving the rest up and down. And then the way that the rest actually connects to the riser. I just think it's a good idea. So this outside piece actually comes off and you connect this little piece to the riser itself. That's what it is able to move up and down with your micro adjust on. Once you get it where you want it, this outside piece, you snug it back down. So it is attached to the riser of the bow in multiple spots. I also like that when you're stalking, if you need to, you can lock that up. So far, there's just quite a few things that I think are a benefit to this rest. Up next is the Elite EON. The Elite EON is equipped with the CBE Trek Pro single pin sight, and it has the Hamskea Epsilon version 2. I know that it looks a little bit white in the video. That's because I was checking for clearance issues. Didn't have any, but I was still checking for them. I appreciate the micro left and right adjustment. I appreciate the micro vertical adjustment. I appreciate this extremely solid construction and the inner workings, and I appreciate they got rid of the spring right here that was stretched and had so many issues, and they stuck a rubber type of spring on the string instead. So far, impressed with the rest, and I found it very, very easy to set up. Up next in the Carbon Showdown is the PSE Mach 33 DS. This bow is equipped with the dialed sight. This specific dialed has a 3-pin vertical. Unfortunately, those 3 pins are not adjustable individually. However, obviously you can figure out what those 3 pins are, and then you can put a marker here on this dial, because you have multiple markers for what those other pins actually mean at that yardage. So far, this sight is one of the most durable sights I've ever messed with. The way that it has micro adjust left and right, the up and down movement, I mean, it is smooth, it is solid, and so far, I am very, very impressed with the dialed sight. This bow is equipped with the Hamskea Everest Rest with the COR attachment from Hamskea. Again, you know, this rest was easy to set up. It just feels like it is very well made, very well machined. I appreciate the fact that I can adjust the launcher arm angle just like you can on the Epsilon version 2. And so far, I have been pleased with that rest. I look forward to putting it through the paces. As far as the 2 aluminum bows go that I have added in the test for comparison purposes, I have the Mathews Lift X. It is equipped with the CBE Trek Pro 5-pin sight that are horizontal pins, but it is also a slider sight. As for the rest, this is a Vapor Trail limb-driven arrow rest. I have had a ton of success with the Vapor Trail rests. I really appreciate the integrated bubble level on the Vapor Trail. I feel that as long as you get that bracket level and then obviously put the rest on the level bracket, you're therefore working with a clean slate, so to speak, because it's already level. The next comparison aluminum riser is the Bowtech Proven 34. This bow is equipped with the Integrate Black Gold sight, which offers a 2-pin, the lower pin being adjustable vertical, so you can get a gap that is set specifically to you and your setup. Also, this bow is equipped with the ripcord ratchet IMS mount. Again, with the ripcord ratchet, I don't know that there is an arrow rest out there that can be set up as quickly as this. Again, the left to right on the launcher arm needs work, but when you can literally run that cord in there, ratchet it, and if something gets stretched or something, say you're hiking and this gets wrenched on and slides a little bit or something like that, so you look over and your launcher arm is a little bit higher than it's supposed to be. All you do is you're gonna reach over, hold that launcher arm down a touch, click it until it's tight. You're ready to go again. And I just think that is something that is gonna be really beneficial moving forward. Those are the bows in the test. We have the 4 carbon bows and the 2 aluminum bows included for comparison. Let's get into the test. Out of the box bow weight. So I'll literally strip off tags, pull off the plastic, whatever else. Other than that, what it came with is what it's weighed with. These bows are being tested in no particular order. Up first, I have the Prime Form. I appreciate how the Prime feels almost the exact same throughout the entire draw cycle. You're just drawing this bow and then you just hit that back wall and you transition slightly. It almost feels like you need to push the string forward. But you transition slightly from there to there. But once you get back there through that little transition, I mean, it is a super solid back wall. And upon the shot, the fact that it feels almost the same through the entire draw cycle is great, and having a really solid back wall is very beneficial as well. As you can see, the bow doesn't shake a whole lot there when I hit that back wall. Again, basically no hand shock. I mean, it's just enjoyable to draw that bow back. And like I say, you basically don't feel it in the hand when it goes off. Up next, on the carbon bow side, is the Hoyt RX9 Ultra. Again, another smooth draw cycle where you just kind of draw the bow until you hit the back wall. There's not really, I mean, you have a transition right there at the very end, but it's such a small transition that you just kind of stop drawing the bow and you just squeeze that shot off. Again, it's just crazy because you see right there, I mean, the bow almost doesn't even move through that transition. So when you're not seeing a lot of movement when you transition from draw cycle, valley, etc. to back wall, that tells me that transition is not very dramatic. And that's especially in a hunting scenario. You are looking for a very smooth transition so that you can not only get on target faster, but you're not making a lot of movement when those animals are watching. Overall, I would say that the draw cycle, back wall, transition into the back wall, and the hand shock are slightly better than the prime. You look at those cams and you're, holy moly, they're big like a, kind of like a Mathews cam, but they have a pretty circular shape. So what I've learned when you have a bow that has pretty circular cams, typically the transition into that back wall is not as bad. And truly this is no exception. So, I mean, you transition from right here to there. So I would say the transition is worse than, say, the Hoyt, but right on par with the prime. And the back wall is really solid. And I feel nothing when I shoot it. I will say something that is different about the Elite is you can screw some screws in and utilize it as a limb stop. So, I mean, if you are looking for a solid back wall with absolutely no give, screw those in, you'll have a limb stop, and it would win the back wall category hands down, because then it would be a limb stop rather than a cable stop. Like I said at the very beginning of the test, it is my goal to test apples to apples as best as I can. So in doing that, I'm trying to run them all as cable stops. Perfect. There you go. That is the Elite Carbon EON. Storming outside. The PSE Mach 33 DS has what I would consider a good draw cycle. The back wall The let off is easy to adjust. You just draw this bow and it just kind of stops. I mean, there is obviously a slight transition and much like the prime, it is like you have to push this thing forward. I mean, that's crazy. But just like the prime, it has a little bit of that transition into the back wall right there. When the shot breaks on the PSE, they're really, I don't feel any hand shock. There's no vibration throughout the carbon riser. There's no twang, there's no twang sound. It just, the shot breaks and that's it, which is nice. As far as the draw cycle goes, like I said, you're drawn and there's a slight transition to that back wall, but it's nothing that is, you know, bad or unenjoyable. It is 100% something that you would just shoot and get used to. I just really appreciate the way that the grip just seems to fit in my hand. Our first aluminum bow in the test is the Mathews Lift X. The draw cycle on this bow is very consistent throughout the entire draw cycle curve, and then you transition into that back wall. You start drawing this bow back, and as you see right there's that transition into the back wall. And so you watch that transition into the back wall. It is by no means bad or hard, but it is more noticeable than on the Elite and the Hoyt. And a little bit more than the Prime even. I would say it is probably a little bit more than the PSE. I mean, it's right there really close to that PSE as far as that transition right into that back wall. Once the shot goes off, there's no hand shock throughout this riser. There is no vibrations, no residual or anything along those lines. It honestly feels great. Another thing I want to touch on real quick is the grip of the Mathews bow. Kind of like that PSE, it just seems to fit in my hand well. But overall, I would say the draw cycle is a little bit more aggressive than some of the other bows. And again, you know, it's not quite a round cam. It has a little bit steeper cam. Therefore, the draw cycle would be a little bit different than some of the bows over there that have more of a round cam. The transition to the back wall is definitely more noticeable than the Hoyt and the Elite, but it's pretty close to the Prime and the PSE. For what that's worth, take it, leave it. So here we have the Bowtech Proven 34. Noticeably smaller cams than any other bow in the test. The cams are much rounder than the majority of the bows. I would say the Hoyt and the Elite cams are probably as close to the shape that this Bowtech is offering. Another thing to note is it is on the comfort setting as far as the Bowtech is concerned. For a draw cycle, I mean, smooth draw cycle. You almost don't notice that transition into the back wall. Without a doubt, this bow has the most hand shock out of all of them that are being tested. So take that for what it's worth. As far as the draw cycle and the back wall go, again, you kind of just draw and stop. I would say that the back wall is a little more spongy than the majority of the bows tested. Again, though, without a doubt, the most hand shock out of all of them. This is really the only bow that I feel any type of vibration when I shoot it compared to the other 6 bows. But the draw cycle, throughout the draw cycle, it stays very consistent. You transition into that back wall, there's a small transition, but not near as noticeable as the Mathews Lift. And definitely feel the difference in the performance setting over the comfort setting. And the performance setting just dished out 274.1 compared to the 263. So roughly 10, 11 feet per second faster. But man, that transition into that back wall is definitely a lot more noticeable when you're on that performance setting compared to the comfort setting. As you draw this bow back, right there you hit that performance setting, and then it transitions into that back wall. Same back wall as the comfort setting. And you just let her rip. 272.7. 289.6. So it stands that the performance side of the draw length module is roughly 8 to 10 feet per second gain over the comfort side. But you can definitely tell the difference in the draw cycle and the transition into that back wall. But I guess if speed's what you want, then go with the performance setting. Just wrapping up the back wall test. Full transparency, it was pretty challenging because none of them had a bad draw cycle, back wall, or transition into that back wall. But picking them apart is what we are here for. So, you know, just an overall draw cycle as far as smoothness goes prior to transitioning into the back wall, I would say that the Hoyt Prime Elite and the Bowtech on the comfort setting felt very similar. When it came to transitioning into the back wall, the Hoyt Elite and Bowtech on the comfort setting, you almost didn't even notice the transition into that back wall. You're just drawing and you basically stop. As far as the Prime and the PSE, they were so close that it was very challenging to tell the difference. I mean, you're drawing and you feel a little bit of a transition to that back wall, but nothing that would hinder you or make it hard to shoot or anything along those lines. And then the Mathews. The Mathews was slightly more noticeable when it came to transition into that back wall than the Prime and the PSE, but they were so close, it was honestly really hard to tell them apart. When it came to actually being on the back wall, the only bow that I noticed any type of movement on the back wall was the Bowtech. It just seemed like it was a little bit softer on that back wall than the other 5 bows in the test. As far as hand shot goes, once the bows were actually shot, Again, the Bowtech was the only one that actually had any type of vibration or hand shock. The rest, when I shot them, I almost felt nothing, which made them very enjoyable, but also is beneficial when it comes for shooting, accuracy, and other things like that. I will say, I also tested the Bowtech on the performance module, and the transition into that back wall in the performance module was the most drastic out of all the bows tested, especially compared to it when it was on the comfort module. Now we are going to test the back wall and the amount of movement in the back wall of each one of the bows. This is the aerospeed portion of the test. I will be testing all 6 bows at 27-inch draw length as well as 29-inch draw length. I'll be using the same 3 arrows throughout the test so that you're able to see the velocity gain from 27 to 29 inches. On top of that, each one of the bows is within 0.5 pounds. Lastly, the chronograph and I will not be moving. And I actually contacted Garmin to ensure that I'm utilizing the chronograph the correct way. They said that the target needs to be a minimum of 7 yards on the back side of the chronograph. It's about 8 or 9 yards right now. On top of that, they said to have the chronograph as close to me as possible without hitting the bow. So we have everything set up. Let's get into the test. $269.1, $269, $269. This new Stokerized quick disconnect is friggin' awesome. Makes switching your stabilizer back and forth to different bows or getting it on and off for travel a breeze. 269.1, 268, 268.2, 267.8, 267.4, 267.3, 266.3, 266.1, 266.1, 268.6, 267.4, 267, 263.8, 262.6, 263.5, 274.1, 272.7, 273, 274.8, 285.1, 284.9, 284.7, 293.6, 292.1, 292.5, 284.3, 283.2, 283.5, 288.6, 287.3, 288, 287.5, 287.8, 286.5, 280.7, 280.3, 280, 289.4, 288.4, 289.6. This is the shootability challenge for the 2025 head-to-head bow test. The purpose of this challenge is to try and quantify which one of these bows is the most forgiving when a human is shooting them. What I'm going to do to try and remove as many variables as possible is I have paper tuned all of these bows to the same set of arrows. I will also be using the same Stokerized stabilizer along with their brand new quick disconnect for their stabilizer. We're also going to be shooting at the indoor 70-yard range to remove the weather elements. I'm going to shoot each one of these bows for 5 different sets of 3-shot groups. I'm going to start with 3 sets out of each bow, and I'm going to start over and shoot 2 additional sets from each bow to hopefully spread out my fatigue as an archer and any other errors that I might be inducing. Lastly, while I am shooting these groups, if I pull a shot or feel that a shot was just really bad, I'm going to go down, pull those arrows, not take measurements, and I'll reshoot that whole 3-shot group. With that, let's get into the shootability challenge. Five inches, 2.5, 3.5, 4 7/8, 4 inches, 1 inch, 5 1/8, 3 5/8, 1 7/8, 3.5, 3, 5 7/8. 3 1/4, 3 5/8, 3/8. Two 7/8, 2 1/8, 3/4. 5 inches, 2 3/8, 2 3/4. 2.5, 1 3/4, 3/8. 3 1/4, 2 7/8, 1 inch. 4 1/8, 2 3/8, 3 1/8. 3 5/8, 3 1/4, 1/2 inch. 3 1/2, 5, 2. 4 1/2, 4, 5 1/2. 2 inches, 1 3/8, 2.5, 4 7/8, 2 1/4, 2 inches. Four and 1/8, 4 1/8, 3.5. 5 7/8, 4 3/4, 1 1/4, 4 1/8, 3 inches, 1 1/4, 5 1/8, 1 7/8, 3 1/4, 3 1/4, 3.5, 3 inches. Two inches, 1 1/16, 7/8, 3 1/4, 1 5/8, 1 3/4, 3 3/4, 2 inches, 2 1/4, 4 1/8, 2 1/4, 2 inches. 4 1/8, 3 1/4, 2 inches. Six, 3, 3.5. We got 1 inch and 5/8, 2 1/4, 2 1/4, 4 5/8, 4 3/4, 1 3/8, 6.5, 5, 1 5/8, 3 3/8, 3.5, 3/4. That concludes the 2025 Carbon Bow Showdown. As I mentioned from the beginning, the Mathews Lift X 33 and the Bowtech Proven 34 were added in for comparison's sake. To recap the tests that I put the bows through, the first test was the out-of-box bow weight. The PSE Mach 33 DS and the Mathews Lift X 33 tied for that test. The next test that I conducted was the draw cycle, shot feel, and sound emitted by each bow. As far as the draw cycle is concerned, the Hoyt RX9 Ultra and the Elite EON had the smoothest draw cycle, and the transition to that back wall was almost unnoticed. Once it came to actually shooting the bow itself, there was only one bow that had felt vibration and hand shock throughout the riser, and that was the Bowtech Proven 34. As far as the sound emitted once the bow is shot, the Bowtech Proven 34 won that test, but it was closely followed by the Elite EON. The next test that I conducted was the back wall test. Essentially what that is how much movement does the bow have once it's on the back wall. The Hoyt RX9 Ultra and the PSE Mach 33 DS were the winners of that category. After that, I moved into arrow speed. I tested the bows at 27-inch draw length and 29-inch draw length with the same 3 arrows so that I could show you the velocity gain from 27 to 29 inches. As a reminder, the bows were all within 0.5 pounds. As far as the arrow speeds are concerned, for 27-inch draw length, all the bows were very similar. It wasn't until I utilized the flip disc technology offered by Bowtech and put it on the performance setting that the Bowtech was the clear winner of the 27-inch draw length category. Moving into the 29-inch draw length category, the Hoyt RX9 Ultra was the winner, hands down, of that category. The last test that I put all the bows through was shootability. As a reminder, this is not how accurate the bow is or how well it can shoot out of a hooter shooter. What I want to know is how forgiving it is and how well it shoots when all of my human error is involved in the shot process. To remove as many variables as possible, I shot at an indoor 70-yard range. I tuned all 6 of the bows to the same 3 arrows, and I shot 5 3-shot arrow groups and took the average of all 15 of those shots, measuring from center of shaft to center of shaft. Not a single bow had a group size average of over 4 inches, which was awesome. The winner of the shootability test was the Mathews Lift X with a 1.98 inch average group size at 70 yards, and it was followed closely by the Hoyt RX9 Ultra with a 2.48 inch average group size at 70 yards. Another thing that I want to touch on is that several bows in the test offer features that allow you, the end user, to tune them without tools like a bow press. The Elite EON Mathews Lift X 33 and the Bowtech Proven 34 offer a host of features so that the end user is able to tune them effortlessly. Just an FYI, I will be super tuning these bows, and I'm going to follow every single step that I take, literally starting with pulling it out of the box to be ready for your next hunt. I'm going to put all of those super tuned videos on the Adventure Off Script YouTube channel, so be sure to check those out. A huge thanks to Prime, Hoyt, Elite, PSE, Mathews, Bowtech, Black Gold, Ripcord, CBE, Hamski, Limb Saver, and Stokerized for supplying all of the gear so that this head-to-head test was possible. I really appreciate it, and so do the viewers. As for you, the viewer, thanks for taking your time to watch this video. I know it was pretty long, but hopefully some of the information that I provided helps you be more informed for your next bow purchase. And I can't thank you enough for watching this and supporting Rokslide, because your support helps Rokslide grow and thrive. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and be ready and on the lookout for the next Rokslide video.